All right, so we're on. Hi everyone, this is Paul's Mental Health Diaries. I'm Paul. Today we got a guest on. Introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself, Paul.
So, hi everyone, I'm Paul. Also, I'm sure there'll be a joke later about that. From here, just outside Newcastle.
All right. Yeah, well, actually, just mentioned me. I've got the same name and also the same surname, which is the most craziest thing ever. I'm not saying. I'm not actually talking to myself. There's actually two Paul Cuses in the world.
In fairness, I think
It's
there's
a
a
really
few more than
popular
that.
name, though.
It is. It's a really
all
popular
great
name.
people, all great people are born with Pauls and Hugheses.
Absolutely.
All right. Um, Tom. So we sort of know each other through Roundtable. Once again, a guest is from Roundtable on here. Tell us about Roundtable for you.
Thanks so much, Paul. So, I'll continue the mantra of the best men's club in the world. I'm from two tables. I'm chair of E Club, which is our electronic table. That sits with no postcode, and I also am a member of Wheatley Bay Roundtable, which is 207, out here on the coast in the northeast.
Okay, so you just say chair of E Club,
Indeed,
chairman of E Club.
yeah. So, interesting story there. eClub was launched in 2020 on the back of COVID to continue brotherhood in an electronic way. It is the UK's, or Great Britain and Ireland, only club that has no tied postcode, and it is here for everyone to take part in, either as a main member or as a second club. Um, we're here to continue fellowship and brotherhood across the country, and it's really good for people that perhaps have a job that's on the road. A number of the sort of founding members were truckers, so they were out and about all day, every day, and just felt they wanted a way to connect with each other. But we're also a proud advocate of Check-in Tuesday, which is all about men's mental health. So every fourth Tuesday of the month, we have a session which anyone can join, cameras on, cameras off, depending on how you feel. I often joke that I can waffle on for an hour if no one in the room wants to talk. But obviously, it's an opportunity to just get the good, the bad, and the ugly off your chest if you want to, just to help.
Is is that Roundtable only or not?
We do. I mean, we do advertise it to non-members if they want to join, because it is an online session. So you don't have to be in the club. Obviously, it is a club activity, but anyone's welcome to join if they feel they want to get involved. That's the other thing about eClub as a table. We don't necessarily have the strong rules that other clubs do in terms of we're a bit more open, we're a bit more relaxed, because again, there are no boundaries, and we want to sort of keep it that way.
Has ever E Club come out of the, that's to say, out of the screen and ever met together?
Absolutely. So part of our sort of club mantra is that we try and get together at least once a year, and we tend to hold our AGM at national conference. Again, it's one of those activities that everyone can get to generally, so we do that. I'm also a champion of face-to-face contact, so always willing to get involved, and I get invited regularly to other club events, to join tablers and get out and about, whether that be I was down at the London West End a couple of months back. Obviously, I do a lot with my home clubs in terms of Whitney Bay and Newcastle and Alnwick. But yeah, always willing to get out and about and involved, and just benefit from that. And again, let's talk about the future in terms of getting some E Club sponsored podcasts out and about. That
Yeah, well,
could be quite a good tie-in.
Yeah, well, this is a really nice. I think I remember. I think I spoke to someone from E Club. I can't remember his name, but it was. I did talk about a mental health podcast from there, and that's sort of like how this idea came along. Yeah, it was.
That's it. And
I
I
don't think
think
it ever really got set up.
I don't think Roundtable as an organisation ever wants to lose that face to face and connection in terms of you know the analog world. But I do think that we've got an opportunity to do a lot more with our digital tech um, as a club, but also as an organisation. I think that's that there's opportunities out there that we're yet to explore.
Okay. So the reason why you've wanted to come on and you got you on as a guest is because you're a published author now.
I am, yes. I've written a book, believe it or not. It's and I will plug it later, but yeah, it's the story of the roller coaster of my life. Um, it's one of those scenarios, and it never started off as a book. I'll just put that out there. I never deigned to be a published author, but as I've sort of gone through my life over the last 25, 30 years, people have always said, "Oh, you should write a book one day," and I always used to laugh it off and go, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," because in life, during when you're doing things, you don't really think that it's anything different or extraordinary, or you're just living life. Um, but yeah, I'm one of these people. I'm self-diagnosed ADHD, so I always want to have things going on and doing lots of stuff. And part of that is I'm a very practical learner. So I've got a thirst for knowledge, if you want to use a term. I like learning new stuff, but to do that, you have to do it and get it wrong usually to then learn from that and learn from the mistakes. And the book was part of that in terms of I've got a real interest at the moment in artificial intelligence. I think that I'm old enough to be older than Google, and we lived that sort of pre-internet era. We grew up with the internet, but I I think when I look back, I was too old to really understand it, but also too young to learn it. In terms of the internet, just happened around us. We grew up with it, so it just naturally fell into place. Whereas artificial intelligence, I think I'm at a point now where I can actually learn about it, understand it, deep dive into it, and get more out of it. Um, I also think that AI has got um, more opportunities than we ever will imagine. So, um, as a bit of a test bed, as a little bit of a learning by doing, I started telling AI and literally physically just talking through the stories of my life. Um, and I started from when I was at school, and then what happened when I left school and went to university, what happened when I dropped out of university, um, and so forth and so on. And then as each chapter started being built, um, the AI tool, the ChatGPT for a bit of name checking, started putting the stories together and linking them with a little bit of text. So, and I do declare it in the book. The book was written with the help of AI, but all the stories are true, and it's just the bridges between each story that the AI machine has understood what I've told it or learned what I've told it, and then put together, added in the context to put the story together. Um, and again, even when I finished the book and I ended up with an A4 manuscript, I put it away. I was like, right, great. I've told it lots of stories. It's 122 pages long. It's not a quick read. Um, and great. I've done it. I've tried it. I've got the result I wanted. So I put it away and just left it. And then I think it was over Christmas. I was like, well, I've written a book now. How do I go about publishing it? So I started again this whole learning by doing process. Again, a bit of research. Amazon is the easiest way to publish a book because Amazon Kindle have step-by-step guides and processes to develop the book. So again, just started playing around with that and following the instructions. You put your title here, you put your preface, your forward, you upload a picture for the front and back of the cover, and then after a bit of playing around with it, it was like your book is ready to be published. Press OK, and hey presto, after a bit of checking there was no references to Nazi history or anything like that. The book was published, so that was that. And the great thing about Amazon or about Kindle is once you've put it in there, because of the way they make you format the book, if you buy it, you can buy a paper copy. Amazon will print it on your behalf and then send it out as a paper copy. Hence why I've got the real book here, the real deal. But of course, it's one of those where, again, I got to the end of it. It was live. I was like, "Way, I've got a book on the internet! Wow!" And then people actually started buying it, which is the hilarious bit. I mean, again, I put it out on socials. I was like, pleased to announce I've written a book about my life. If you really want some light material to help you sleep, pick it up, have a read. It'll probably explain why I am who I am, why I do certain things, and I've sold a handful of copies. So I can now proudly say I'm a published author. And as I say,
so yeah, it's good.
People have actually bought my story, and again, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure that actually most of the copies have been bought by friends and family, and people that know me. But hey, that doesn't matter.
No,
the interesting thing is that I've been really open and honest. And again, I've got a couple of friends that said to me, they were like, "You've written a book about your life." I was like, "Yep." And they were like, "Warts and all?" I was like, "Yep," because that's the only way that you can live life. You can live it through honesty and transparency, and life isn't a perfect picture. And I think sometimes we as human beings get caught up in painting that perfect life, certainly on social media. We only ever post the good things. We only ever talk about the good things. I think that's starting to unravel a bit now. I think people are being a little bit more honest out there, and actually we're moving through that life cycle. But again, I'm not ashamed to admit, I had a heart attack at 41. I had a mental health breakdown Christmas 2024, and again, I didn't realise it at the time, and that's part of the reason I wanted to come onto the show today, is to talk about that, because I'm okay just to go straight into it. Sorry, I'm waffling.
No, of course you are. Yeah, of course you are.
Cool.
I
Cheers,
was
Paul.
about to say you did describe the book as a roller coaster, but go ahead.
Absolutely, and I think it's important that we recognise. I didn't recognise I had a breakdown until I came out of it, and because I just thought I was living life and I was getting on with it, and I was just I was getting through the day, and it was interesting because I was under a lot of pressure at work, and at the time when I had my heart attack in January, just over 12 months ago now, January 2025, I put it down to stress at work. And I really, because of where I was in my mental health state and where I was in sort of life, I put it down in my current stress levels with work and the pressure that work was giving me at the time, and everything around that. But actually, once I came out and started to recover from the heart attack, I started realizing that actually I've had 15 years where I've gone from boom to bust. So, and again, I think that's also the book helped me get a bit of closure, because it is a roller coaster, and everything I've done, something goes right, and everything's wonderful, and I'm up on stage winning awards, and the endorphins are really high, the dopamine's really high, and everything's fantastic, and you're celebrating, you're doing this, that, and the other. But then I've been at the other end of that. I've lost everything in my life twice. And again, we talk about it, hence why the bailiffs are involved in the title of the book. Back in 2015, I lost my relationship, my home, and my business overnight because I had a pub company with a friend of mine, with my other half, and that was repossessed. The downfall of the pub company happened effectively over a 3-month period. But because we were living in the moment, because we were doing everything, and we were paddling so fast, we didn't see the bigger picture. We just saw we were going through a rough time, and it wasn't until that last pub was repossessed by the landlord. My other half went, well, there's no money left, I'm off. And the business went, and I lived on site. That was my home. So I ended up back, spaniel in hand, with nothing else, back at my parents' house in my old bedroom. So that was 2014. There'd been a couple of other instances before that, but again, I've got to leave something in the book for people to buy it for. But then, fast forward, readdressed my life, went back to university to do a master's, which led on to building the brewery. And again, we had some real highs with that in terms of, as I say, best porter in the UK in 2017. We were at festivals with Tom Kerridge, Chris Evans, people like that. We were really flying, and we were voted the fastest growing brewery in the UK in 2019 by the FT at the time. They were really high points, but obviously to do that, it was hard work. It was 7 days a week. It was leaving the house at 2 a.m. to drive somewhere, so you were set up for 8 a.m. in the morning to then do a day's trade in the field, and then drive back and do it again. And then Monday to Friday we're in the brewery, and we had the tap room open on the weekend, and it was just constant. And then we had COVID, which I'm very keen to say that actually, from an entrepreneur's point of view and as an ADHDer, I really liked COVID because, and I don't mean that in a sort of a gory way, but from a business perspective, I liked COVID because we had to be agile, we had to try things, we had to change things. But whilst we were doing that, our guests and our customers were okay with it. They were okay that we launched an app overnight, and then actually we took it down 6 weeks later because it wasn't relevant and it wasn't working. They were okay that we turned our bars into IKEA style beer shops where you'd walk in the front door, walk out the back door, and pick your beer up in between. And they were really forgiving in terms of us just trying anything to stay afloat and keep the business running. Because we were one of those sectors that didn't get government support because we were manufacturing. And I say government support in the way that other sectors got support. Don't get me wrong. We were part of the national scheme in terms of furlough and bits and pieces. But that also meant that I had to continue running my business while I had none of my team around me because they were furloughed, because that was the only way we could support them. So COVID was a really good time because it, as I say, it gave me it got those endorphins going, it got the dopamine going, and we were able to try things and do things and just be really entrepreneurial in terms of, right, okay, so we've got beer in barrels that needs to be repurposed into bottles because we can't sell it on draft anymore and things like that. And then that came crashing down in 2023 when HMRC came through the door and demanded we pay the money we didn't have. So that was the downfall of the brewery in literally 10 days from. So in a 10-day period, we went from planning the biggest ever summer tour we'd had as our sort of return from COVID tour in 2023. I think we had something like 53 dates in the calendar. 10 days later, I was handing the keys to the business over to an administrator, and it had all gone, and it was over. And I had to then So I'd lost everything because everything I had was invested in the brewery, and I suddenly needed an income. So luckily I'd like to say I'm multi-skilled. So back into hospitality I went, and that led me back down to London, away from the northeast. And again, I was able to go back into someone else's business and grow it for them. And again, continuing my sort of trajectory of that's what I do is, guest first, team second, driving that business forward. And that got me recognised, and I got promoted into a bigger restaurant that had bigger problems and more challenges. And that's where I think it started to all unravel. So because the mandate was big restaurant, big problems, big challenges, we just need to do it. A parting gesture from my area manager at the time was, we under your leadership, the sites had the best financial performance in this quarter than we've had for many years. Because everything I do, I give it 120%. But that takes its toll. And what I now recognise as a breakdown was, at the time, for me, business as usual, in terms of you get up, you go to work, you do your thing, you then get home at you get up for 9 and get the doors open for 11. You do your day job all day. You lead your team, you develop your team, you start to make things better for the guest, so they keep coming back, and then you finish off 10, 11, 12 at night. You go upstairs to bed. You realise you haven't eaten all day because you've just been focused on what you're doing. You probably eat something at the wrong time of day. You go to bed and then you start again the next day. And we did that. I did that throughout, November with the lead up to Christmas, December with Christmas, through into January. And again, you do silly things. Bearing in mind that I knew I was dog tired, I knew that I hadn't given myself any rest. I would get in my car and drive the whole of the M25 to go and get stock that I needed because from another site, because we'd been busier than expected. I was working for a corporate that was very, very data aligned. So you could only order the stock that the system told you could order. You could only do this, that, and the other. So if you got, as we did, you got more guests than expected. You then just have to deal with those problems day to day. Being an entrepreneur, just getting on with it. And I look back now, and as I say, when I think of the time I drove from Kingston on Thames through to Maidstone in the snow on the M25 at 11:30 at night, I now look and go, I wasn't safe to drive. I was being absolutely ridiculous in terms of my looking after myself, my own body, and also being a danger to everyone else. Potentially the consequences that come with that. But then, as I say, we got through that. And again, it was all about focusing on making sure the team got it through it, making sure the business was in growth, because that was my metrics. That's what I was doing. And you get through that. You go from the peaks of Christmas, where you've got 200 people sat in a restaurant, you've got 20 staff front of house, you've got a brigade of kitchen team back of house. You then go to the second week in January, where you've got 2 people sat in a restaurant, and you've got 1 member of staff out front, and you've got yourself, and you've got 1 member of staff in the kitchen, because again, we were working for a big corporate, and that's what we were allowed. So you still don't get the break that you think coming out of Christmas. You're going to go, oh well, actually, life's going to be really easy because we can now slow down a bit. But actually, for me, as the mine host, as the landlord of that business, you just keep going, and there's no respite, and you continue to be crazy. And as I say, it wasn't until I had the heart attack and I was led in hospital because I couldn't go anywhere else. I had no choice. You start to think, and you start to unravel what you've been doing, and you start to look and go, that's not normal behaviour. the decisions you made weren't decisions that sane people, and I say sane in the best of with love and respect to everyone, but you're making decisions that just shouldn't have been made, and you're not protecting yourself. And as I say, to me, the heart attack was my body telling me to pack it in, and just really just stop doing what you're doing, start thinking about me as a person, um, and that's where I started reaching out for support. But it wasn't until my body stopped me from doing it that actually I needed to to basically sort my life out. Um, so I did. So on a positive note, I left that hospital. I resigned, um, and I did a complete 360 on my life. I went, right, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I came back up to the northeast. I made some phone calls, reached out to some friends, and got somewhere to live. Reached out to another friend who pointed me in the direction of a nice public sector job where I work 9 to 5, and I don't go over 37 hours a week because I don't need to. It's not expected of me, and actually I'm able to put more of my life and focus my life on me. I'm very lucky. I live a 15-minute stroll away from the beach, and again, I was talking to someone in one of the local pubs, and they were like, actually, the healing powers of water and wind and air are much more than we believe. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a spiritual person, but I think actually just having that sea breeze, having the air, the beach, everything around you just makes it easier to work out what you're doing. So yeah,
Okay,
that's my story.
okay, so tell me a bit more when you started realizing about your mental health then.
Yeah, so again, it was, as I say, it was that realization that I wasn't present, I wasn't there, and actually my life was it was an autopilot, and the signs for me were the fact that I wasn't making cognitive decisions. I was I wasn't well, I wasn't in the moment, and the fact is, I turned off the looking after myself button, um, and I was just purely delivering and focused on um, delivering the task in hand, and I wasn't thinking for myself. I wasn't. There was no. Yeah, as I say, all I could describe it really as is I was on autopilot, and you know I wasn't reaching. I wasn't talking to friends. I wasn't talking to family. I was literally just in this world, and,
Of
and that's not right.
autopilot. Yeah,
That's
yeah, completely. Like it seems acceptable. It seems understandable that people can do that. I think it takes that awful thing of a kick up the arse or a kick in the teeth to you say your heart attack or other things that can just go right. Okay, I need to actually pay attention to myself now, and actually start showing up for myself than pay attention to everyone else. Um, and as you say, the realization of you having a mental having a heart attack and then having a mental breakdown, it's led you to the book, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because
Okay,
again,
so
it's just again, I'm very conscious that, um, and I don't really lean into mental health in the book. I do reference it, and again, I reference the heart attack, but they're not huge. They're not huge stories. That they are on one level, but that it was a relatively short space of time uh, that I sort of recognised that was happening. Um, and I literally I checked out. That was the thing. I wasn't engaging with anyone, and I was, as I say, the best way I could describe it is autopilot. I just my brain had switched itself off to being engaged with anyone. And as I say, I look back, I wasn't eating. I was that exhausted that I wouldn't call it sleeping either. I would literally, I would lay down on my bed, whether I was closed, whether I'd got changed for bed, whether I was still fully awake, fully dressed. And within minutes, I'd be out. But it wasn't good quality sleep. It was exhaustion. And again, I think that's all these things are signs that you don't want to believe, and you don't want to think about. And again, I was like, well, I'm busy. We've got to get through this. It's a busy period of time. I'll rest later. I'll do this. I'll do that. But when you start looking back and going, I wasn't eating. I was surviving on caffeine and adrenaline. I wasn't. I disconnected from everyone around me, bar transactional activity. So I was leading my team, but I was doing it in the fashion of, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you. We're not going to discuss it because we're just going to get on with it. Which again, that isn't me. I'm a very collaborative person. I'm very, I'm very much a leader in terms of we lead from the front, but we lead together. And my whole persona had just changed because I checked out. And I'd shut down as a person. I was just, as I say, getting through it. But my concern, I suppose, the bigger concern for me is where I'd be if I hadn't had the heart attack. Luckily my body had recognised where I was, and it did something to stop me or change me. As I say, and obviously it's one of those things you don't want to you don't want to think about. But for me, it's about talking to people and getting them to understand where they are in that process, because it does, all these things affect people. They affect people in different ways. But no one else had recognised it in terms of me, because I just shut myself off from my external support network. As I say, I wasn't talking to my family. I didn't have any friends in the south, so I wasn't talking to them, and I was just busy. And to my colleagues, because it was a new site for me, all my colleagues were new, so they didn't really know me as who I was. So they just thought I was doing my job and I was being a twat. But because that's what they thought I was. That's why they thought I'd been brought in, because I was just this awful person that was here to make huge sweeping changes and do things, and again, that's not me. And I really had become this different person.
Okay, so tell me more about the book then how this idea came.
So as I said earlier, the book was never written to be a book. But then actually, when I look back over my life, a lot of things are never supposed to be what they are. And when I say that, I mean, I always start off with an idea or a conversation with someone, and that's I've got a bit of a mantra that everything starts with a conversation. And as I say, with the book, it was a case of, well, actually, I'm going to try and I'm going to put some stories together and see what happens. And then you sort of put it down and you leave it, and then something else happens and it manifests, and it manifests into the book. And as I say, at the moment, it's just sat on Kindle and Amazon. I might start, when I have a new thought process, I might start actually trying to sell it out to independent bookshops and bits and pieces. But what I recognised through writing the book and actually seeing all the stories in order is that that's how I dictate my life. So there's a chapter in there about a pub I took over that literally I rented off the brewery for £1 a week. So me and my friends, again, it was when I was back at uni for the second time. Me and my friends were working in someone else's pub, and we were like, we should do this for ourselves. And we were like, well, none of us have got any money, so that's out of the question. And then I sat there and I thought, well, there's no harm in asking. So I made some inquiries and got a lot of no's and dead ends. And, if you haven't got 30 grand, don't bother, stop wasting my time. And anyway, I came across this small family-owned pub company. I managed to get hold of the area manager, and I said, "Look, this is a really strange request, and please forgive me for wasting your time, but I've got a personal license. I'm really passionate about hospitality. I've got a background in it. I've got some friends with me. We want to run our own pub because we think we can make a difference. We can be put it at the heart of the community and just have a good time." And he sort of went very quiet for a minute and went, he's like, "Well, I have got one pub." I was like, "Right." He was like, "Well, it's boarded up at the minute, but you can have that for £1 a week, and we'll see how you go. You've got to buy your beer from us. That's non-negotiable. You pay your rent. You pay £1 a week for the flat as well. Because actually, from their point of view, they'd rather have someone in there running it and buying beer than having it sat boarded up. So it was a win-win for both parties." And I was like, "Yep, sounds like a plan." So anyway, I was still working in one of the other pub companies, just down the road from this pub. And I remember it was a Friday night, it was busy service, and anyway, the property manager for the new pub company sort of walked in the door and went, "Right, there's the keys for you. We haven't been in since we boarded it up, so don't know what state it's going to be in. Good luck, and I'll catch up with you next week." I was like, "Right, okay." So I've got a set of keys to this pub in the West End of Newcastle that's boarded up on a not so affluent housing estate. So anyway, we finished work at 11:30, drive across to this pub, put the keys in the door, open the side door, and we're faced with this big wrought iron gate that sits across the stairs to the residential flat. So you sort of walk into the vestibule, you've got a door through to the main pub, the stairway rising up to the flat with this big wrought iron metal gate, and then a door out. And we were like, "Okay, so what have we walked into?" Anyway, enough of that. So we get the pub open, we get it trading, all is good. Talk to some of the locals, and they were like, "Oh yeah, the reason the wrought iron gate is on the bottom of the stairs is because one of the previous tenants put it on because he used to deal drugs through the gate." I was like, "Okay, so we've got that sort of pub, have we?" And he was like, "Well, you know." So anyway, we cleaned the pub up. We got it trading. We got rid of the drugs. We had a collection of people that thought it was okay to snort cocaine off the pool table, but we politely got rid of those with only one headbutt. So that was that, and we turned it around and we got it trading, and then we had what I would say was the best summer of our life. So as you can probably imagine, there were four lads living above a pub. Basically, we would run the pub around our university timetables. Well, luckily, we all did different courses. There was always someone in the pub, but it was just one of those summers where, and a sort of an in-betweeners movie would go on where it's absolutely hilarious, to the point where you get a customer come in and they go, "Oh, can I get a Malibu and Coke, please?" And we're like, yeah, sure. And she's like, "Oh, I can't see it on your back bar yet." I was like, yeah, don't worry about that. You go and sit down, we'll bring it over to you. And then one of us would sprint across to the corner shop and buy a bottle of Malibu to then bring it back into the pub to then serve it. So it was very, very scrappy in terms of how we built the business, but we did, and it worked. And that I think is how I sort of approach entrepreneurship: is just get on to do it, because there's never a right way or a wrong way, and it's more fun when you do it that way. But anyway, we got the pub trading. It was selling a good volume of beer, and then we got a call from the pub company that said, "Look, we've now found someone that's willing to pay us proper rent and put proper money into it now that it's up and trading. Are you okay with that?" So that was the end of that story. But the only time I've walked away from a pub and the pub company have sent me a check at the end of it to say thank you. But yeah, so that's one of the many stories in the book that go on about that. And as I say, it covers the days when we were at school and we were part of the enterprise project, where we were selling stationery to our friends within the school playground. And we did crazy things like delivering roses on Valentine's to different people throughout the school. So that's how it started. And it's just gone through there. So you've got the £1 pub, you've got the estate agency we founded, the pub company that we had in the south, where we took what were empty on trading businesses and turned them into some really nice gastropubs. Again, that was a challenge of we grew too quickly, so we ran out of cash because we were investing the cash flow into the next project rather than being a little bit sensible, which led to the downfall and led to us losing everything. Back to university, then the brewery, the downfall of that, back into Surrey, the heart attack, and then it finishes off with what's next. Because at the moment, I'm currently working for the regional government in a very nice, straightforward, stress-free job, but that doesn't necessarily suit with who I am. Obviously, I'm very mindful. I don't ever want to get back to the scenario I had before. I think as I grow a little bit older, I grow a bit wiser. But yeah, that's what the book covers. If you want, it's $4.99 or $9.99 on Amazon, depending on which version you want. And coming to a bookshop near you, I hope.
Good. So tell me what it's like writing a biography.
Yeah, I think you have to decide before you set out. If you're going to be completely truthful and it's going to be warts and all, and it's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly, or if you're just going to write a rose-tinted version of what's happened to your life. Because, and again, a lot of my friends or a couple of my friends have raised the question. They were like, "You've been really honest in the book, and there's probably stuff in there that you wouldn't want people to read, or you wouldn't want people to hear about." And the way I look back is, I'm like, well, it's a life I've lived. I'm not. People that are with me at the time go through it with me, so I'm not sharing anything that hasn't happened. I'm not sharing things that people haven't experienced with me in the first place. All I'm doing is I'm putting it all together in one place. So I think I decided early on that if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it honestly. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to talk about the mental health. I'm going to talk about losing everything. I'm going to talk about the fact that my dad, bless him, when a bailiff turned up at his house, he got me out of bed at 6:45 in the morning, marched me downstairs to talk to the bailiff, and then just quietly wrote a check for my debt and got rid of him. It's that support of a family that you don't necessarily always think are there. We always say, "Oh, our family are wonderful," and this and the other, but sometimes it's just the quiet enabling that people do to make sure we get through life. And again, that's another bit in the book in terms of when we had the pubs in Oxfordshire. My dad took on the maintenance and the gardening and the rest of it. My mum came and she cleaned the pub, and she made sure it was ready for me to showcase to the world that I was good at what I did, and that support I had behind them was absolutely invaluable. A lot of what I've done, I haven't had my parents and my family near me because most of my life has been 250 miles away from my folks up in the northeast. They're down in Oxford. But what was really nice and what the memories I recall is that whether they're there or not, I know that they support me. So yeah, it's for me, as I say, the AI was very grateful. I was very grateful for AI because it did the heavy lifting. All I did was tell it stories and then sense check it and format it. It was and I think that's for anyone wanting to write a book and thinking, oh, it's really hard to do or whatever. I think that's, if you're gonna have a play. At the end of the day, if you don't like it, you don't publish it.
Yeah.
But like anything I say is what's the worst that's going to happen? Well, I think that comes from my background, as I say, of losing everything. And I'm still here. I'm still fighting. I'm better than I was last time I looked. I've lost everything twice. I'm still good. And don't get me wrong, there are days when I look and go, well, actually, if I'd have just left school and got a job and had a normal, straightforward, linear career like most of my friends and school buddies, I'd I'd probably be driving a nice car. I'd probably be living in a nice house that I owned, etc. etc. I'd probably have 2-3 holidays a year, just because of the trajectory of my supposed career. I'd like to sort of point out I'm educated. I've been to university. I've got knowledge, academic knowledge, but the reality is what makes me is what I've learned, and I've learned that the hard way. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And as I say, some days I go, well, actually, if only I'd have done this. But I've had an absolutely amazing life where I've been able to go, right, well, I want to do this and I'm going to try this and I'm going to give it a go because, as I say, I've lost everything and I've got no fear anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me what I think what's interesting about biographers. I think biographies can show a lot of or the author or want a lot of vulnerability shown in biographer or biography. So tell me what it's like when your readers are going to know that you've been vulnerable in your life, and they want to hear that you've been vulnerable. So tell me what it's like to know that your readers are going to know that you've been vulnerable in your life. Is that
Um,
a good personal thing? Is that a,
I think it shows we're human. I think that's the
yeah,
thing. I think a human being is vulnerable. And we're very good in this world of, as I say, portraying this wonderful, perfect life that we've got via the likes of social media. And I think there's nothing wrong with vulnerability. I think we all seek connection and um, we all seek empathy and we all seek hundreds of emotions. I think vulnerability is one of them, and I think, as I say, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And by writing it down and by sharing with everyone or other people that I am vulnerable shows that I'm human. I'm not this super robot. I don't, again, I've and I'm guilty of it myself. When we had the business, we only ever showed the good bits. So our guests and our customers thought we were this wonderful business. They didn't see, and I think we quite easily ignore the hard bits in life, or we don't want to show them because we don't want to show that side of weakness. When actually that's part and parcel of being a human, and being a person. And again, you know, the key to me is when I realised what I was going through at Christmas 24. The first thing I did when I'd made that realisation was reach out and get support because we can't do this on our own. You can't live life on your own. You can't live in isolation. It's life is a team effort. I think, and I think it's really hard when you're a single person because you don't necessarily have that other person to bounce off, and you don't have that, and even a friend's network or connections sometimes isn't enough. And I think so when I as I did, you lock yourself away from all of that. You're never going to solve your problem. You're just going to get yourself that spiral deeper and deeper. So the key to me was, as soon as I recognised that there was a problem, I sought help. And the resources and the tools and the people involved with Calm, which is where I went, were absolutely fantastic for me. They were so it was so on point. It was it was relevant and it was just useful. And again, don't get me wrong, I'd been connected with Calm previously. And again, I mentioned it briefly in the book, but I don't in depth talk about it because it's not relevant to the story. But when we had the brewery, I lost a friend to suicide. And the only reason I found out that was I did a check-in with them at Christmas. and I ended up speaking to my friends of the half. Used to me that he'd taken his own life and passed. So I immediately went into a mode of, right, we need to do something, and that's what launched a couple of collections of beer we did. And again, I'm not going to sort of delve into that because it's not a subject for here. But so I was aware of Calm, and I was aware of the great work they did. But it was only when I actually needed to use them and get their support that I realised how valuable they were.
Okay, so coming up to the end of the podcast now. What films and what books and songs just inspire you? I've always liked to ask my guests.
Thanks for that curveball. I think one of the a music that inspires me is, or a song that inspires me is "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey. Now, again, brought back and made relevant by the TV show Glee in the early noughties. But having spent my early career working as a barman in Flair's, the 70s theme bar, I was very accustomed to the song in its original iteration. But that has been a song that I often sort of refer to or play, or just because actually, for me, my life is all about believing I can do things, believing I can make deliver great beer, I can make a fantastic business grow, I can support people where I need to. And I've got a belief in myself that I'm a good person, and good people attract good people. And again, that's links into my time with Roundtable and the work we do in the community and all the rest of it. So yeah, long-winded way of saying favorite song of mine is "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey. And then when we talk about people, I've got to be inspired by good old Bob Geldof in terms of his Live Aid. Obviously, I'm too young to have been part of the original Live Aid movement, but Sir Bob is one of those people that when he had an idea, he just got on and did it. And that's a bit like me in terms of my life. And like him, we both understand that you're not an island. You can't do everything yourself. So you embrace other people and you get other people involved and around you to deliver what they're best at. And when we look at Live Aid, yes, it was led by Sir Bob, but actually it wouldn't have been as successful without all the artists, without all the people there doing what they believe is what they're best at. Yeah, so inspired by Sir Bob, and unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever see such a concert or event as Live Aid was. But I just that's sort of what inspires me to continue.
Okay, something I just want to pick up on the last question. You said about you're talking about vulnerability and stuff, and you're saying we're all human and stuff. I want to say that talking more has become a huge thing lately, hasn't it? And I do on my TikToks, I do a daily talking it out, and that has been great to open it up, and it's been great to talk everything out. And but I liked what you said, that you said we all can do this. We all can be vulnerable and human. So talking about it makes it less scarier as well.
Of course, it does. Absolutely. And like I'm a big advocate of conversation. As I said earlier in the talk, everything we do in life starts with a conversation, because if you don't have those conversations in the first place, you can't ever move forward. And you don't, if you're not having conversations with people, you don't understand their side of the story or their take on or of the activity, or um, and also talking is key to getting things off your chest. We say it all the time. yeah, having a conversation, absolutely. I'm always up to have a cuppa and a chat with someone, and just listen, because and I think that's we've got two ears and one mouth for a reason, but you can only use them if someone's willing to talk to you.
Completely agree. All right, we can finish the podcast now then. Been really good to talk to you, Paul.
Thanks so much, Paul.
We've had some really good conversations, and yeah, I'm happy for it to be the 5th episode. And yeah, thank you for coming on.
Pleasure. Nice to see you.
I'm going to stop recording and then I'll come and chat to you again.